All right, good morning. I'd like to call our May 6th meeting Board of Control to order. Can we have the roll, please?
Good morning, everyone. It is now 11:04 a.m. Calling the roll for Nan Baker. Here. Dale Miller. Here. Trevor Mackler serving as an alternate for Dan Brady. Here. Mike Dever. Here. Matt Carroll serving as an alternate for Armin Budish.
Here.
Angela Rich serving as an alternate for Dennis Kennedy. Here. Lenora Lockett. Here. We have a quorum.
All right, we have the minutes from our last meeting, April 29th. Are there any questions or corrections? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from April 29th. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Any public comment today, Andrew?
No public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. We're on to contracts and awards. First item.
First item is item BC 2019. It's a tabled item, item BC 2019-334, Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Children and Family Services, submitting an amendment to a contract with Community of Hope for group mentoring services, previously referred to as the Open Table Model, for transition age young adults who were previously and are currently in foster care. And it's for the period July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2019, to extend the time period to June 30th, 2020, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $150,000.
Good morning, Bob Math with Department of Health and Human Services on behalf of Children and Family Services. This was an item that was tabled at the last BOC meeting. I think there was some communication that was going on back and forth, and I think ultimately the decision needed to be made whether there was some conversation about amending it for 6 months and then issuing an RFP. There was some conversation about amending it for another year and issuing an RFP for July of 2020. And I think that's how it was left last week, and then we had some correspondence back and forth, and I think the decision rests with the Board of Control in terms of, how he'd like us to proceed.
Right, I thought if you have the answers that Bob provided to the question that was posed, I think that accurately describes the status. There was some discussion initially about a one-year amendment and then further discussion about the 6 months. So we're here to have that conversation. I would just, I would say, Bob, I have a question first. This is a licensed intervention, right? This open table, is that right? I believe there's a license associated with it.
There was, but she's moved away from that license and created this group mentoring program. So initially it was a licensed open table. There's a model coming from Arizona.
But she's doing a variation on that, I guess is what you're saying.
Now she is.
And just out of curiosity, has anyone come forward to request information or participation in this type of work?
At least not to myself. I'm
not saying that's conclusive.
No, of course.
Question.
As far as we know, as far as I know, there is no other organizations, at least locally, that are doing group mentoring. There are organizations that are doing the traditional one-on-one mentoring. Whether they can do the group mentoring or willing to recruit the hundreds of volunteers that are involved in staying active with these kids for minimum of a year, that I can't answer.
All right. Any other questions for Bob? Trevor.
Mr. Chair, not a really question for Bob, but Bob's correct. We had some communication back and forth over the last week. After further conversations with the council president and council members Baker and Miller, I was going to suggest that we decrease the contract length for a 6-month contract. And during that time, we go out to bid. And as Bob mentioned last week, we have the bid close to ready to go out. So I think having 7 months or so would be adequate enough time to go through a public bidding process.
And I think we all agree that we are going to bid. We want to do that. I think that's a priority for everybody. I just think the only issue is the uncertainty it puts the organization in to have less time. I don't know if that's something that's been identified. Is that any discussions about that, Bob?
Well, I haven't had any conversation with Ms. Donovan, who's the the director of the program. I just know from previous experience. We can surely, obviously the RFP was almost crafted and ready to be reissued for this year until we were asked to just amend that contract. The one potential problem is these kids that are involved in this open table, on these tables, the commitment's a year along with the volunteers. So it would put, so the question for, Ms. Donna would be, can she continue to recruit kids knowing that we don't know what's going to happen in 7 months from now? Can she continue to recruit volunteers, and what happens to those tables that are active now that have just begun? What happens come, December 31st? Because we don't know, who may bid or may not bid on this response. So, that creates, some programmatic issues.
I will say we could also issue the RFP pretty much immediately, you're saying,
Probably within the next 10 days.
and continue with the year extension, and then we could make an adjustment if bidders come forward. If bidders don't come forward, we could leave it as a year, and then consider the next contract after that. But we could see the results of the bid, of the RFP, before we had to take any action on the, further action on that contract. Even though I would say, again, proposing we'd extend it for a year, do the bid, and then see where we stand. That is an
But,
option.
if you want to extend it for a year, but, Trevor's indicating it potentially is a
Well,
6-month amendment.
that's the
so-
option I was
Yeah.
talking about, right? Yes, Councilwoman.
It would seem that the people that are organizing this and have been doing it would probably be the strongest bidder. I would think that they would, if they have confidence in their work, that they would probably be the front runner anyway. All this does is just reinforce that we are on the right track and that there isn't someone else out there that can do as well or better. So the fear of losing the contract should be pretty minimal on their part, because they believe that they're doing the finest job that anyone out there can do, and for a reasonable amount of money. So
I think that's true. I don't think necessarily, though, that might be the message that we send. That's a possibility with, it presents uncertainty.
That exists, of course, but there are potentially other organizations that, there could be other open table models that are outside of Cuyahoga County that could come in. So to make that assumption there's some risk involved in making that assumption. I don't disagree, but,
Right.
Somebody could come in with a similar model and considerably cheaper, who knows?
Mr. Chair, just to follow up from the meeting last week, I believe a bid is necessary here, in part because it was originally a sole source contract, and as Bob mentioned, they've shifted from the license or whatever process was under, that they were previously under, that results in them no longer being a sole source contract. So that's where I believe we know that there are other vendors that provide mentoring services, maybe individual or maybe not group efforts, but it's been close to now a 3-month or 3-year contract, that I think it's appropriate now to extend it for 6 months and do a public bidding process for it.
And we all agree with the public bidding process. I think we're all unanimous on that. It's just a question of how long we extend the current contract. And to me, I hear the rationale for 6 months. I don't see the strong rationale to not make it a year and go through the RFP process immediately. But, I think it's just two different perspectives.
I guess with that being said, Mr. Chair, I would move to amend the proposed contract to be a 6-month contract extension, and for the amount of $75,000.
Is there a second? Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Anyone? You're going to say something, Andrew?
Was just going to read into the record, if everyone is okay, just
Well, we're
the
going to
time
vote
period.
in a second.
Right. But I wanted to read into the record the actual change.
Oh, go ahead. It's just to clarify the motion.
Correct.
Okay, you can go ahead and do that.
Okay, so we are amending the time
No,
period.
we're going to vote on the vote, but just to articulate the motion.
Right. Trevor Mackler is motioning to amend the agenda to reduce the time period for 6 months and to reduce the dollar amount from $150,000 to $75,000, and the time period would be extended to December 31st, 2019. Just want to clarify.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Is there any further discussion, any further comments?
Mr. Chair, just
Yeah.
one further comment. In discussion with this particular item with the council president, the concern over the status of the Health and Human Services levy for 2020 and beyond, which chair of the finance committee has been working pretty hard on this. Just wants to, the point of the bidding process and their shorter contract is really to also ensure that we're getting the best value for our contracts when it comes to the levy expenditure. So just some more justification for the reason to.
No, I think there's definitely justification for the RFP. I just don't think the time frame is persuasive to me that it's absolutely necessary. I would like to, we have organizations doing a good job. I think we'll feel comfortable with them. We have flexibility if we issue the RFP immediately. We can see what the fruits of it is, what the results are. I don't think it's necessary to make that 6-month choice today. If we get multiple bids of say better organizations in the time frame, we could easily make a shift and make a change earlier. We may have the contractual provisions may allow us to end the contract early. I'm not sure, Bob, if that's part
Well,
of it.
we'd have to enter a new contract amendment with Ms. Donovan for 6 months for $75,000.
Well, no, I understand. I'm just saying if we did the year extension, and then we did an RFP immediately, and we learned that there were other bidders who are potentially could do the contract, we could, at that time, decide to go a different direction at an earlier date, because our contract with the organization allows for a end in 30 days usually. Is that the case?
Well, there is always termination language in the contract.
Again, without having to force the 6-month forward, we can learn how many people apply to see if it's a real thing that there are others interested in applying for this. At this point, we have no evidence of that. I'd say that's the reason I'm going to vote no on the 6-month motion. So,
Mr. Chair, just to respond to that though, but that would be very unusual that we don't typically do that here at the county, where we know we have a year contract, but we're going to bid out just for that current time frame to see what kind of other vendors are out there. So, I mean, I think that would just be an unusual step that we typically don't do here. So I don't understand that.
I would say this is an unusual step as well to put this contract in, to send this message with this contract. That's my view.
Well, I'll disagree with that, because it went from a sole source contract to now no longer being a sole source contract. So other vendors can provide the service. So I don't think that's an unusual step here. I believe we're doing the right thing here in terms of what used to be a sole source contract is available for other vendors to potentially bid on. We might not get any vendors to bid on it. I don't know if there are other vendors interested in this, but I think that's an unusual step here if we're talking about unusual steps.
Clearly a good idea to RFP the contract. Again, I think we all agree on that. I just think the time frame is not appropriate. And I think our email conversations over the last week suggested that we all went back and forth on those kinds of questions. So anyway, I think we're clear if there's not any further conversation. At this point, we have a motion and second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the motion, I think we'll ask to raise your hands if you could. Please raise your hand if you approve the motion to extend for 6 months. All right. And those voting no? All right.
Motion's approved.
Motion 4-3, Andrea.
Yes, the motion is 4-3.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Next.
Hold on.
Yes, Councilman.
We approve the amendment, but we should take a vote on approving the contract as amended.
Is that, okay, very good. All right, the amendment has been voted for a 6-month extension, but we also will need a motion on the contract itself as amended. Is there a motion? So moved, and a second? Motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Next item BC 2019-340, Department of Public Works, submitting an amendment, subsidiary number 6, to a contract with PERC ME joint venture in connection with the grading, draining, and paving of Pleasant Valley Road from York Road to State Road in the cities of Middleburg Heights and Parma for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $498,799.82.
Mike Chambers of Public Works, asking for approval of this item. The project is essentially complete. It's about 99% complete. I know there was some questions about the change orders. I did forward a more detailed explanation. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, any questions? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Motion second. All those in favor of approving the item, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Next item, item number BC 2019-341, Department of Public Works, recommending an award on requisition 43322 and enter into a contract with Pet Fix Northeast Ohio, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $180,000 for spay, neuter, and transportation services for the Cuyahoga County Animal Shelter, and it's for the period, which will be amended. Right now it says November 1st, 2018 through October 31st, 2021, and it should reflect May 6th, 2019 through May 5th, 2022.
Good morning, Tom Pavich, Department of Public Works. This item, we're requesting approval to enter into a contract with Pet Fix. It's a not to exceed dollar amount, $180,000 for 3 years. It's an as-needed service. This was a formal bid we did with OPD. We went to 10 vendors. We had 1 bid submission, and we're awarding to that vendor. This particular vendor, they provide spay and neuter services for our county kennel. The key component of this contract is they do the actual transportation as well. So we've got another vendor that we do spay and neuter with, but they don't do the transportation. This one actually has the transportation service, which saves time and money for us.
Any questions? Councilwoman?
Only noting the dates, just for note of record, that the dates are incorrect on the agenda.
That's correct.
So is there anything we need to do to make sure we have the corrected dates?
Will be,
The dates are correct. They did provide a revised contract, and I read it into the record, so we'll just state it as amended.
it'll be, or in the minutes, it'll be correct.
Correct.
The 5/6/19 to the 5/5/2022.
That's correct.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve this item. Is there a second? Motion and second. All those in favor of approving the item, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next time.
Next item, BC 2019-342, Department of Development, recommending an award on requisition 45109 and enter into a sole source contract with Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation in the amount not to exceed $14,050 for maintenance, support, and training on portfolio management software. And it's for the period May 6, 2019 through May 5th, 2022.
Morning, Greg Huth with the Department of Development. The PIDC is the vendor for our portfolio system that we use, the software that we use to manage the economic development loan portfolio. It's been working out really well for us, and we just want to continue the contract with them for maintenance and for training into the future.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'd like to move to approve this item. Is there a second? Motion and second. All those in favor of approving the item, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Thanks, Greg.
Next item, BC 2019-343, Department of Information Technology, recommending an award on requisition 45375 and to enter into a sole source contract with One Spatial, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $119,750 for One Integrate and First Engine Term software licenses and training services. And it's for the period May 6, 2019 through May 5th, 2022.
Good morning, Janelle Green, Department of IT. One Integrate is an export, transfer, and load application that's specifically designed for geospatial data sets. So this will allow the GIS team to be able to convert the data from municipalities over into our current standard format.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve this item. Is there a second? Motion and second. All those in favor of approving the item, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Janelle.
Next item, BC 2019-344, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services, requesting authority to reimburse the State of Ohio Department of Emergency Management Agency in the amount of $293,758.36 for grant funds received for the purchase of automated fingerprint identification system, also known as AFIS, equipment, in connection with the fiscal year 2014 State Homeland Security Grant Program, and is for the period September 1st, 2014 through January 31st, 2016.
Good morning, Mary Beth Vaughn from Public Safety, and as Andrea has already read, this is reimbursing Ohio EMA for AFIS hardware and software that was purchased using the 2014 State Homeland Grant that's not being used for its originally intended purpose.
Questions? Councilman?
Even though the servers are not being used for the intended purpose and we're not able to use state grant money for this purpose, are the servers usable for other purposes of value to the county?
Janelle Green, Department of IT, yes. We are able to use it for other purposes as these particular, this equipment is in the format and the standard that we have for other IT functions.
Other questions? All right, Trevor?
Mr. Chair, I was just going to add that the Inspector General's office and the Internal Audit Department, they're still working on the review of what happened here. And in discussions with them, they think they're going to have a report completed here in the next couple weeks. It doesn't really relate to returning the money or not, but kind of what happened here. So they updated us this morning on that matter.
All right. Yes, Councilwoman?
It has also been brought to our attention that there is no doubt that these funds do need to be returned, but it also is not required legally that we even vote on this today. So I understand the issue of transparency, although I think that most people know it's been out there long enough. We've heard it in committee. So I'm not quite sure why it's really on this agenda. I mean, a lot of things can be put on the agenda for transparency reasons. So it's a little in question there as to why we're even asked to vote.
Oh, sure, go ahead. Unless you want to clarify, Andrea? No, go ahead, Angie.
Mary Beth, do you know if we have a letter from OEMA asking for the money back? I know there's been discussions, but have we received an official communication from them saying that they want the money back?
We have not received a formal letter from them, although we did send them a letter telling them that we will be making reimbursement to them, and we've had conversations with them assuring them that we are in the process of making that reimbursement.
Yes, but I thought in part of those communications they were going to send a letter to the county.
You're going to need that, right?
Yes, I would like to have that for the audit. To follow up on Ms. Baker's question, I'm not sure all the facts are in yet to be voting on this issue.
Meaning that as far as if the amount to be confirmed and the paperwork
Exactly.
generated.
I'm not sure if the state has done all of their review if they have not sent us a letter requesting. I thought that was part of the communication that.
I'm not aware of that being an issue. In fact, in all of our communications with Ohio EMA, we have been assuring them that we are in the process of making this reimbursement to them. We have not requested a letter from them, nor were we informed that we were going to need to do so. So I can get that letter from SEMA so that we can make this process. My only concern would be is I would not want to jeopardize any of the other monies that we do have coming to this county while we're holding up this payment.
Okay, well, I just thought in communications that I've seen that we were going to receive an official communication from them saying, yes, that we need to provide the money back. That's all.
I mean, I think as far as the timing's concerned, it kind of doesn't affect the question of whether it should be on the agenda for voting. Either way, we can approve this whenever the time comes that it would be paid. And, but that's for further conversation.
Mr. Chair, if I could I ask, Angie, would If you receive the letter, would that be sufficient for you to be able to issue the check to reimburse? Or would you need a Board of Control approval in order for you to issue the check?
Well, because this is grant dollars, yes, we should receive official communication from the grantor saying that this money needs to be paid back. Yes, I could issue a check based on Board of Control, but from an audit perspective, for this to be clean, I would prefer that we have all the facts in about this issue, and that we would have, everybody is on the same page of this is the amount that needs to be paid back. I'm not disputing that it needs to be paid back. I'm not sure we all have all the facts yet.
Mr. Chair, to that point, I would, in considering that around the answer that we are not legally required to approve this payment, and to Angie's point, and the fact that even our own internal staff are still reviewing just the process around it, I would request that potentially hold this, if not bring it forward if we realize we don't need approval.
I'm definitely comfortable holding it. I would be inclined to defer to the law department's recommendation, even though it's, again, I think, acknowledged not to be legally required. I think it's a good discretionary move to have this, approved. It's a unique sort of item. I'm very comfortable with the Board of Control hearing it and voting it. But I think we can all agree we're going to hold it at this time. Is that the sense of the group? Okay. So, all right. So we'll, Andrea, will just hold it until at least the next meeting.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
The next item is a two-part item, item number BC 2019 it's a one-part item, item number BC 2019-345, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services, submitting an agreement with the Cleveland Clinic Foundation in the amount not to exceed $100,800 to provide vendor-hosted next generation 911 services to the Cleveland Clinic Police Department, and it's for the period May 6, 2019 through January 31st, 2025.
This agreement will allow the Cleveland Clinic to piggyback on our contract with Emergency Call Works to be part of the county's dispatching software. Right now, when they receive a phone call that's being transferred to them, all they get is the call. They don't get any of the backup information that our Emergency Call Works system provides. And they're reimbursing us all of our costs associated with them being on this contract with us.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve this item. Is there a second? Motion and second. All those in favor of approving the item, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
The next item is a two-part item, item BC 2019-346, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services. A, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 45400, which will result in an award recommendation to Motorola Solutions, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $28,700 for a state contract purchase of a site controller to communicate on the Cleveland radio system, and B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
As Andrea's mentioned, this is for the site controller. This actually is what allows our dispatchers to communicate with the individuals on the radio system. It is also used by the sheriff's office for communicating with the deputies that are in the field.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve this item. Is there a second? There's a motion and second. All those in favor of approving the item, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. I believe we are moving on to the consent agenda.
Yes, consent agenda items numbers BC 2019-347 through 350.
Any questions about the consent? Yes, Councilwoman.
I did ask on the travel to Philadelphia, the choice between by air or by car, as to why 12 people will be traveling by air. Is there an explanation for that?
Thought we were going to have a representative from the, we do. Mr. Stanton, is Mr. Stanton here? Oh, great.
Thank you. Mark Stanton from the Public Defender's Office. I understand the question. I would indicate to to Councilwoman Baker is if you look at this from the standpoint of air travel versus going in a car. First of all, we don't have 6 cars available for 12 attorneys. Most of these attorneys are young attorneys. Myself, I'm going up a day early to meet with other criminal defense lawyers and hopefully the public defender in Philadelphia. So you have 6 cars for 11 individuals. We don't have 6 cars. We're not gonna obviously ask the county for 6 cars because there's no guarantee that the county would have those 6 cars. But if you look at this, many of these people are younger attorneys. The majority of them are going for the reason that this is a training, it's a fundamental training that any criminal defense attorney must have, and that we did not have for 15 years prior to May of 2017. If you look at the mileage and parking, it's $364.50 plus 66. That's $430 times 7, but at 58%, at 58 cents reimbursement, 58% reimbursement, it's $746 for 7 drivers. That's $250 a person. If you look at the airfare, of course, it's not $43.74, it's $25.38 because the reimbursement from the state of 42%. 25.38, 11 people flying is $230 per person. If they're driving, it's $250 per person. So you're actually saving $20, it's cheaper to fly. The mileage is capped at $364.50. You're not paid for all the way up and you're not paid in the least for all the way back. So you can't compensate those who drive. It's an 862-mile round trip. That's $499.96 at 58 cents a mile. So it's $500 versus $364.50. $136 that's not being compensated to the attorneys who are driving. That's a heck of a lot of money to these folks. You can't compensate them for the wear and tear on the cars, the time on the highways. I believe somebody indicated at the prior meeting that that's a 7-hour drive. I don't know who in this room has ever driven to Philadelphia, but I sure as hell have a number of times. And you can get to Philadelphia and be 40 miles outside of Philadelphia. I had to do it for labor negotiations over 20 times in a 5-year period. You get to I-76, 276, I-95, I-495, take you another 2 hours to get in there. It took me anywhere from 8 to 12 hours to make that trip every time. Then I had to go to New York and Boston. And on the way back, I drove down to Nashville last year, Memphis, again, to save an airfare for us. It took me 15 and a half hours to get back. Nobody compensates me for that. The safety factor is still alarming when you have 2 people in a car driving that distance back and forth. They have to get back. They have to have trials on Monday. If it takes them 10 to 11 hours to come back, they have meetings until 1 o'clock on Saturday. They're getting back at midnight. They all have trials or serious pretrials or motion hearings, sentencings on Monday. So not only is it cheaper to fly, it's a heck of a lot safer. These trainings are fundamental. If I could just say one more thing, because County Council was so generous and gracious to give us this money, we spent $16,000 in 3 years on training. From 2014 to 2016, it was an embarrassment. We were an obscenity in the courtroom. We couldn't send half of our attorneys for 1 seminar a year to Cleveland, to the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. They had to pay out of their own pockets, they weren't compensated, and they had a heck of a hard time qualifying for their 24 hours of mandatory CLE. This, you have 8, I know 8 of these individuals who are providing services to us, guest speakers. I've been with a couple of them on other seminars. These are nationally known people. The Ohio Academy of Criminal Defense Lawyers does not offer it. Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association does not offer it. You can't find any one of them. And if they did, and if it was in Dayton or Cincinnati or Columbus, it would be more expensive. We always apply for scholarships. We're going to Columbus next month, 15 attorneys. We have 15 scholarships for those attorneys. So I can go on and on. Obviously, there's more important things that should be addressed here, but I do feel very strongly about this. It's just cheaper and safer.
Further questions or response?
Just a comment that I certainly don't question anything that is related to the purpose and the importance. My only question was that with 12 people and 4 in a car, you could have 3 cars, and I was questioning why it is that we wouldn't take that initiative or even just consider it. But it's certainly, as you say, we have bigger things to worry about here than that, and it was only a question to ask the rationale behind it.
And I appreciate that very much, Councilwoman Baker, and you're always very assiduous in this area. But I would indicate to you, I'm not gonna ask 4 attorneys to sit in a car for 8 to 10 hours. It's just not safe, quite honestly. It isn't. And they're never gonna be able to get back to court on Monday if they have to drive 8 to 10 to 11 hours back from Philadelphia. They're not getting out of there till 1 o'clock on Saturday. This is a 4-day seminar.
I appreciate your answer.
Thank you very much.
All right, any other questions about this item or anything else on the consent agenda? All right, hearing none. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda items. Is there a second? Motion and second. All those in favor of approving the items on the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, we do have some other business today, Andrea, is that right?
Yes, we do.
Just one item?
Just one item. And this is executive session. All meetings of the Cuyahoga County Board of Control are open to the public under the Ohio Open Meetings Laws. Under that law, the Board of Control may go into executive session during a meeting for specifically authorized purposes. During executive session, the Board of Control confers outside of the hearing of the public, and the Board of Control may not make any decisions about any matters in executive session. All decisions are made in public. This morning, the Cuyahoga County Board of Control will go into executive session to discuss a pending or imminent litigation on the following item. Item number BC 2019-351, Fiscal Department recommending an award on requisition 45581 to Kane and Associates Investigative Accountants, Inc., in the amount not to exceed $25,000 for the period May 6, 2019 through April 30th, 2020. During this time, we are streaming live, and the streaming will be shut down so that we may ask all of those not specifically needed for this executive session to leave the committee room, which will be Committee Room B. Board of Control members will remain in Committee Room B for this executive session. Members of the public who have been asked to leave during this time will be notified once the executive session has ended. We have to take a vote. And is there a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing pending or imminent litigation?
I'd like to make a motion. Is there a second? Motion and second. There's no discussion. All those in favor of approve? All right, we do a roll call. You'll handle that for. So we have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Andrea?
Yes. Nan Baker?
Yes.
Dale Miller?
Yes.
Trevor McAleer? Yes. Mike Dever? Yes. Angela Rich? Yes. Lenora Lockett? Yes. We have a quorum.
All right, we have a unanimous vote to move in executive session. So those who are not specifically needed for this item, just kindly ask you to step out for a moment. We will let you know when we reconvene. When we reconvene. Back on the record. Do we turn the live stream back on?
Yes.
Okay.
It is now 11:58 a.m., resuming the Board of Control meeting.
Okay. So at this time, I'll take a motion for, or I'll make a motion to approve the item that's been presented, 351. Is there a second? Second. Motion and second. There's no further discussion. All those in favor of the item, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you. Andrea, any other business?
Mary Beth Vaughn would like to come up to make a clarification regarding an item that she presented.
Thank you. Mary Beth Vaughn, Public Safety, and this goes to the reimbursement to Ohio EMA. I was incorrect. We do have a letter from Ohio EMA dated March 27th asking for the reimbursement and for the amount.
So I'm comfortable, though, for leaving it as a hold for a week to further discuss any other issues, just so we're clarified. There could be some outstanding details that we don't have, so. All right, any other business, Andrea?
No other business at this time?
All right, there's nothing further. Any public comment before we
And no
go?
public comment at this time.
And then is there a motion to adjourn? And I second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. None opposed. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.